Uh, Hello everyone. Welcome back to the IDRiM podcast, especially in the episode 27. And today we have a very beautiful guest, a young and beautiful woman that will talk about the youth leadership in disaster risk reductions. And our guest today is one of the Indonesia most dynamic young leaders in disaster risk reductions. And I will let her to introduce herself after this. And the reason she's coming to our podcast because we will talk about her activities as the U-INSPIRE Indonesia lead and their involvement in youth innovations, especially in the disaster risk reduction events such as global platform and how this community can become a champion of community-based solution in DRR. So her name is Giovanni. Can you introduce more yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Haris, Ashley, and hello, everyone. My name is Giovanni Cynthia Pradipta. You can call me Gio. I'm from Indonesia. We are from U-INSPIRE Indonesia. So currently, I'm the lead of U-INSPIRE Indonesia. So maybe I can introduce U-INSPIRE Indonesia.
Sure.
So we are a youth and young professional platform in science, engineering, technology, and innovation to accelerate the implementation of disaster risk reduction and climate resilience, focusing at the local, national, and global level. So we started our initiative since 2018. So at that time, UNESCO Office Jakarta gathered young scientists, and we try to find what we can do as youth and young professionals who have the same interest in disaster risk reduction. And at that time, we agreed that we can create this youth and young platform. So yeah, we decided to create U-INSPIRE at that time. So the first is in Jakarta in 2018, facilitated by the UNESCO. So the platform was a community from 18 to 40 years old at that time, mixed from both scientists, researchers, or practitioners who have the same interest in disaster risk reduction. So we came from different major, so it is very diverse, not only from hard science people, but also from soft science. So we have geologists, but we also have psychologists. We even have friends who has focused in art. So yeah, they try to make a disaster risk reduction initiative by applying art. So at that time, U-INSPIRE created in 2018, and then UNESCO Office Jakarta supported us to make a regional workshop inviting youth and young professionals in Asia Pacific. And from that time, we inspired another youth and young professional from Asia Pacific to create their own country chapters of U-INSPIRE. So the first began in Jakarta in Indonesia, but after the regional workshop in 2018, there are several country chapters about U-INSPIRE. So currently we already have 14 country chapters across Asia Pacific and also one in Africa. And from there, we create a U-INSPIRE Alliance as an umbrella, something like that, to manage all the country chapters. But currently, my focus is in U-INSPIRE Indonesia as the lead since last year until now. I think that's all, Haris.
Yeah. So it's basically it's kind of the place of the gathering of many people, regardless of their
Yeah.
background, to interest that have interested in disaster risk reductions process. So,
Yeah.
what actually sparked you to have involvement in disaster risk reductions? What motivated you to come to into this field?
Okay, so before joining U-INSPIRE, I did my undergraduate thesis in 2016, and at that time, I supported my supervisor as well to support his research in Sumba or Eastern Indonesia. At that time, my background is in geodesy and geomatics engineering. So we do some kind of GPS monitoring or mapping, something like that. And my supervisor at that time supported a geologist and paleontologist to did some geology survey in Sumba to understand more about the pattern of the area, and I help with the GPS, sort of some kind of GPS work at that time to take the coordinates from the samples from the paleontologists or geologists at that time. So from there, I realized that we can measure, we can learn about the Earth more deeper, not only on the surface, but also at the deeper level. And um, beside that, my undergraduate thesis is also about GPS monitoring on the plate movement in Eastern Indonesia. So we can get the velocity and acceleration from the movement of the plate. And from there, we can also learn the pattern of the earthquakes, that earthquakes could happen due to the plate movement. And from there, I realized that if we can know that earthquake could happen, so we can also reduce the risk right before the earthquake happens. So that makes me become interested about disaster risk reduction. And after that, in 2018, there was an earthquake in Lombok, if you ever heard about the news, both in Lombok and in Palu, and also in Selat Sunda, there's a tsunami. And I joined the survey team for Lombok earthquake at that time. So during the survey, I realized that our country is still have a very lack understanding in risk. So therefore, our country still have very few efforts in disaster risk reduction, because we can see that there are a lot of impacts occurred after the earthquake in Lombok. And I did drone mapping at that time in Lombok and do the GIS analysis because my background is in geodesy. So I helped to map the most impacted area, and we gave the map to help the government to distribute the aid at that time. But yeah, since then I realized that a lot of houses are damaged, even the public buildings like hospitals at that time. So I realized that disaster risk reduction is not a priority at that time in Indonesia. So it triggers me to learn more about disaster risk reduction until now. So yeah, I joined several research and project focusing on disaster risk reduction by applying my skill and knowledge in GIS, especially for earthquake and tsunami. So yeah, that was my explanation.
Yeah, actually, I'm quite surprised when you said that Indonesia, is low priority for, risk and disasters, and actually for both of you. Why it surprised me is that from an external point of view, the Indonesia gets, hit quite a few times by volcanic eruptions and earthquakes in particular. But I would have felt that it would have been a bigger priority, because here in the UK, where I'm based, it's a pretty calm, but we're quite always on edge when anything happens, and we're always prepared. So I'm surprised that for Indonesia, it's not that case.
Yeah, yeah. So the biggest momentum is after the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami. So that was the momentum for Indonesia to shift our focus, not just for response, but to also for the pre-disaster activities. But yeah, as we can see, after the 2004 tsunami until the 2018 earthquake in Lombok, there are still very few efforts in disaster risk reduction, because Indonesia has so many thousands of islands, and yeah, it's quite difficult to maintain it. And also understanding risk and also risk analysis are not done to all area. And we have a lot of a lot of natural hazards like earthquake, tsunamis, volcanic hazards, but until now, yeah, we still have lot of homeworks to do that.
So, given these circumstances, and then you're also joining the U-INSPIRE, and how it becomes right now. What makes U-INSPIRE different from the other youth involvement movement in disaster risk reductions and climate change adaptation?
Yeah. So if we try to see bigger in Indonesia, there are still very, very few platforms for youth and young professionals focusing in disaster risk reduction. Maybe we can find a lot of platform for climate change activities, something like that, but it's still very, very few focusing in disaster risk reduction. So what makes us different is, yeah, I think we are one of the biggest platform to connect youth and young professionals who has the same interest in disaster risk reduction. And especially we focus to use SETI, science, engineering, technology, and innovation to support the initiative in disaster risk reduction. So we try to connect all the youth and young professionals who already work in not just the government, but also for the non-government. So we try to find what can we do together based on the information from the NGO colleagues or from the government colleagues what are the gaps and what we can do to fill the gaps and to bridge the gap from the science to the community. So the impact is become really, really strong at the local level. So yeah, I think that's what makes us different from others, Harry.
Yeah, and when I'm just thinking that this organize alliance, and so I first came across it in 2023, I think it was at the Gadri Summit at the house I think you attended, didn't you? And that's when I first came across this. And what I'm just thinking here is that you've done quite a lot of good work in Asia already, and you said you've got now a chapter in Africa. Is there any plans for it to go further outwards? Because I'm just thinking in Europe, and in particular, I know of one country in South America who I think would really benefit from this because they already have a large movement of young researchers who may benefit from a more of alliance rather than just focusing internally. But is that something that is U-INSPIRE thinking about doing, moving towards Europe and the Americas as well?
Yeah. Basically, I think we are open for that, but for now, for some country chapters, to be honest, we are still struggling to maintain the platform itself because yeah, it is voluntary based. So people come and go. Maybe they shift their focus or they shift their works. But for now, yeah, we try to focus on how to strengthen the U-INSPIRE Alliance across Asia Pacific. But yeah, we are open. If you know somebody or yourself want to create U-INSPIRE country chapters in Europe or in America, yeah, we are happy to discuss more about that. Yeah, why not?
Yeah, also, do you find a lot of your membership very much, when you say, because it's about young professionals, is there a lot of like students who get involved, or is it those who finished and moved into more into employment in this field?
I think more from the young professionals, but we also have students across Indonesia who interested in disaster risk reduction because disaster risk reductions now are not become the learnings at schools. So not all of the people know about disaster risk reduction, but for youth who already know about disaster and they want to learn more, they try to find U-INSPIRE from social media or when they join an exhibition and they meet us, they try to join. But yeah, currently we have members from students, especially from high school and undergraduate students, but most of them are from young professionals who just graduated from the undergraduate, from their bachelor degree and started their career as disaster risk reduction or climate resilience activists. Yeah, I think most of them are young professionals.
So it's a collections of the many good initiators in U-INSPIRE.
Yeah.
And take for that. And as the expansion process, I guess one of the latest event that for the whether you are it's deliberate or not, you will also come to the global platform to at least in some sense bring your nations that to makes U-INSPIRE more global. So what can you give us? Well, we will explore the details of it, but can you give us a bit of your experience speaking in the global platform and how is it like that there?
Okay. So U-INSPIRE firstly joined GPDR since 2019 at that time. And in 2022, the GPDR was held in Bali. So we supported as one of the organizers at that time. So a lot of my friends become the organizers during the GPDR in Bali. And in GPDR 2025, we submitted an application to join the Ignite stage and etc. And we get the opportunity to join there. So I represent my friends from U-INSPIRE Indonesia to speak on behalf of my youth and young professional platform to share about several sessions. One of them is the side event. It was organized by the National Disaster Management Authority, or BNPB. We call it BNPB, National Disaster Management Authority in Indonesia. And we get supported by DFAT at that time. So I became one of the panelists. And at that time, the topic was about Beyond Bali Agenda for Resilience 2022. So it tried to continue from the GPDR 2000 and 2022, and we share about the positioning youth and local knowledge at the heart of sustainable resilience. So I become one of the two youth that was invited as the panelist to share in the side event. So we share about our experience doing some projects, especially to learn more about the local knowledge or local indigenous knowledge in disaster risk reduction. So we explain our experience starting from the Western Indonesia until Eastern Indonesia on how we try to document the local knowledge in disaster risk reduction and try to make an innovation. Like, for example, we create an expedition and we develop a book or movie, and we also create a sonification, like we try to transfer an earthquake data set into a set of tone so you can hear some kind of music, but basically it was a series of earthquake historical events that ever occurred in Flores at that time in Eastern Indonesia. Yeah, so we explain our experience in doing some kind of innovation for local knowledge in disaster risk reduction at the site event. And the most interesting part was there was a question from the participants asking about how our initiative becomes sustained and how to make sure that our initiative not just stop after we stop doing the project at the location. So I share about them that we try to start the project by doing a participatory approach. So we learn from the local community, what do they have and what they don't have, and what are the gaps that we can help to support as U-INSPIRE, as youth and young professional in science, engineering, technology, and innovation. And from there, we make a communication with the local community itself, and we collaborate with them to work together and start the initiative. Like, for example, the last thing that we did was in Bali to create a low-cost sensor in Tanjung Benoa. It is in one of the village in Bali that is prone to tsunami. So we did a participatory approach. We did a participatory discussion with the local people there to understand more about what are the current natural hazards that ever occurred in Tanjung Benoa and what are the gaps that they don't have to mitigate the risk, something like that. And from there, if we can get the participation from the local community, we can ensure that the initiative becomes sustained. So once we leave the village, they can continue by themselves about the initiative, not only about low-cost sensor, but also about other initiatives such as preparing a disaster team in one of the villages that is prone to tsunami in Western Indonesia. We make a strong relationship with the local community at that time. So if we are not if we are not in the location, they can continue their initiative and they can try to get another funding, but we always supervise them wherever we are.
Well, looks like you have gotten big audiences in there, I suppose.
Yeah.
Part of continuing the Bali agenda from 2022, you also mentioned that you also bring some projects or maybe products as called the coastal sense. Can you explain more about that?
Yeah. So besides side event, we also presented about our initiative in coastal sense in Ignite stage. So we submitted an application for the GPDR 2025, and we got the opportunity to speak, to share about the coastal sense. So coastal sense is basically an initiative to empower local communities to create low-cost technology to improve the coastal resilience. So our focus at that time is to create a low-cost sensor who can gather a local set data, because data is one of the biggest problem in Indonesia. I think Haris already knew that we are very, very difficult to get the data set, right? like most of the data are not publicly available. So we should send a letter to the government, and sometimes we didn't get the data what we have, especially the scale of the data or the data itself is not up to date. So from there, and we know that Indonesia are prone to disasters. So if we don't have the data, then we cannot do anything, right? So from there, U-INSPIRE try to create a low-cost sensor, low-cost technology that can gather local data set at the local area. So we try to create the sensor. We call it like a mini buoy. So it can measure some kind of like a water level or water salinity, something like that, that can help the local community to monitor their coastal area. And we tried to deploy it in Tanjung Benoa village in Bali. We deployed it last year, and we deploy it with the local communities. We develop with them at their own base camp, something like this. So they have their own base camp, like a very simple command center, Haris. So we develop the mini buoy sensor with them. We deploy the sensor with them. We train them to be able to monitor the sensor themselves and to get the alert if something happened, but it's still under development. So we will go there again this month in Bali to check about our sensors. And from the sensors, we expect to get the local data set about the water quality or anything about the water temperature or salinity that can help the community to monitor not only the coastal, but also the mangrove, because in Tanjung Benoa, there are also mangrove that become one of our focus area to start this coastal sense. So yeah, I spoke on behalf of U-INSPIRE in Ignite stage to share about the coastal sense, about how do we develop the sensor and what are the challenges and what do we expect from the participants. Is that U-INSPIRE is a youth and young professional that try to make a direct impact at the local community, and we try to improve the capacity of the local community to understand more about disaster risk reduction, and that they can reduce the risk, not just focusing on after disaster, but they themselves, we can create our monitoring sensor to reduce the risk, and we can improve the coastal resilience, not only in Tanjung Benoa, hopefully, but hopefully in other coastal area in Indonesia. So yeah, we shared about coastal sense at that time in Ignite stage during GPDRR, and we got also invited to did an interview, like a 1-minute interview with the UNDRR to share more about coastal sense. So the video already uploaded yesterday. Maybe I can share it with you, the link, if you want to check. So it's only 1 minute to share about brief coastal sense, our initiative project in Indonesia. And beside that, beside the interview, we also get featured in the prevention web blog to share about coastal sense. Maybe I can share with you again later about the link for both video and the blog.
Yeah, sure. And also, I'm quite interested about this because with coastal sense is how do the communities react, to these types of projects? Because in the UK, we are very, I hate to say it's very individualistic, but we don't work as a community as well as we probably used to. On top of that, we have, and this is a 2 point to it, in the UK, we're not very pro-youth leading projects. And when I attended the science technology platform, a part of what used to be UN, it's now UNDRR, back in 2016, when we tried to launch a youth movement, there was a very condescending tone I felt from some of the more older participants that said, "Oh, we've seen all this before. We don't really do anything." So, how do the community feel about this movement and initiative?
Yeah. So we first met with one of the men. He is one of the local champion, I think, because he joined the disaster risk reduction forum at that time in Bali, and he introduced us to several fishermen who live in the coastal area. So we tried to make a discussion first with the local community about what are their problems, especially at the coastal level, at the coastal hazard, like maybe coastal flooding or tsunamis. Did they ever experience the hazards before? And they say that they never experienced the tsunami for the younger people, but for the older people, they did experience the tsunami, but still very, very low height at that time. But they often got the coastal flooding. So we started to make a discussion with the fishermen, with the local community, and we try to understand about their problems, and we try to understand about their needs that we can support as a youth and young professionals. So from there, we decided to create this initiative. So yeah, basically we started from them, by them, and for them. So yeah, maybe if we try to make an initiative by doing a participatory approach, it become more become something like engage. Yeah, we can engage the community better rather than just doing direct project to the community itself.
Well, it's the point of view of the community that you have been working on. Is there any, I'm not sure, support or even challenges from the local government, or maybe perhaps there are another local government outside Bali that wants to adopt the similar things that you have been done
Yeah.
for?
Yeah. So after we make an informal discussion with the fishermen and with the local disaster risk reduction forum at that time, so we try to create an FGD to invite multi-stakeholders, not just the community, but we try to invite the local stakeholders themselves. And they seem very interested because at that time the FGD was held during evening time, so starting from 7 p.m. Bali time at that time, and the government joined because, as we know, government Indonesia just finished their work around 5 or 4 p.m., right? But they decided to join the FGD until late, and they seemed very interested, and they tried to how to say, like put the initiative to get the funding from the local government budget, like APBD, something like that, Haris. So when they know that this initiative work in one of the village, they try to support by suggesting us to keep the relationship with the local community and to make sure that in the next year this initiative can be included in the local government budget, or we call it APBD, something like that. Even though it's not big, but I think it's still good to have a small budget to run or to keep the initiative going, right?
So, what are the technical or social barriers that you've had to overcome for this project?
The technical barriers? Maybe because the sensor itself, we are still developing, so it's still not 100% succeeded. So we still try to doing the trial and error. I think that is one of the technical barriers. But since we have several members across Indonesia who have different majors, different perspective, so we try to keep developing the sensor. And also my friend who has focused in IoT, he even joined some kind of like a supervision or like an online learning to improve his ability to develop this sensor. Yeah, but the sensor itself, we already deployed last year, but it's still under development. So yeah, we're still trying to find the errors, and we try to finish it by this year, and hopefully it can run perfectly at the local level, especially in Bali.
Now, since you bring so much from U-INSPIRE Indonesia to the Valley to the global platform, is there any things do you take back from global platform that can improve or perhaps to be implemented in the U-INSPIRE?
Yeah, that is a good question actually, because this GPDR 2025, I think it's kind of unique because a lot of people saying that this year they brought youth to become more highlighted in the forum. Even though from my experience, I did not join a lot of youth sessions, but yeah, I can see that from the theme itself, they try to bring the youth voice bigger. So I think from there, the participants try to learn more and to listen more about the youth voice, because when I spoke in the Ignite stage, I can see that the participants are mostly not youth and young professionals. So mostly they are seniors, but they listen enthusiastically. And some people try to approach me after the presentation to learn more about what is U-INSPIRE, what we are doing, etc. So I think from there, I can get the impression that now a disaster risk reduction forum not just listen to the senior, but they want to also learn about the youth and young professional roles and also about the local knowledge. So yeah, basically what we shared during the forum, I think it's very, very in line with the target of the GPDR 2025, like bringing the local knowledge and also bringing the youth voice to the global forum.
And I think actually that is because I personally what I've seen is a trend where there is this feeling that historically, and I've seen it, where youth was more a tokenistic in in these conferences, and it's now there's a lot more support. I feel that especially from
Yeah.
the older generations, that there is that they need to foster and encourage the next generation now, and I think that that is starting to come through. And I mean, I've
Yeah,
in the UK have worked nearly a decade on this very thing about making sure that the next generation is, safeguarding that their voices are heard.
Mhm.
Even in IDRiM, we've made some very, progressive changes in recent years where we, instead of having, the presentations for young researchers, separate on early in the morning, 5-minute presentations, now they're integrated into all the sessions. They get the exact same opportunity as senior researchers. And also, and this is something that I noticed with the global platform, the online connectivity. Young researchers don't obviously get the opportunity to travel as much because there's not a lot of money, and even senior researchers are struggling to find budgets now. For young research, that's
Exactly.
hitting more, and that's hitting more harder. And with these events now on YouTube where you can watch remotely, it allows young people to
Mhm.
participate. Okay, not engage is where we would like, but they're still participating, still absorbing that knowledge and starting to think about different initiatives. So I think that the UN has really led the charge on this, where they have really encouraged getting more young researchers involved
Yeah.
in this. But I feel that there has been definitely a huge shift in the last decade
Yeah.
towards young people. And I think the pandemic helped that, because the pandemic, we young people were more innovative on how we can keep going in research,
Mhm.
where more senior researchers took a bit more time to pivot and get used to the world that we're more used to.
Yeah, exactly. I think it becomes our luck as well, because currently when we see a lot of grant opportunities or proposal, they open mostly for the women or for the youth or for the local community. So I can see that, yeah, not only UN, but also other sectors, they try to encourage youth to participate more in these efforts, right? And that's good.
Well, on the topic of the youth, I mean, like, let me play a devil advocate here. That I'm not sure. I forgot. It was from the Indonesian official or the other countries official that the burden of climate change, it's the burden of the youth, and it's basically uh, the effect of the climate change, the impact of the climate change. I mean, the heat wave that we felt right now in Europe will be burden to the youth to find the solutions and solve that problem. You now as the leader of the one of youth movement, what do you think about this? Whether this is some kind of motivations for you to work, or it's just like oh, you just put their responsibility to us because like well, it's become our problem now, not their problem. What do you think about that?
I think it become our problems, but we can do something about it. As at least we can do it start from the local level. When I started to explain about our coastal sense initiative, I started to explain about the AI solutions. Like we can see that AI is everywhere, and as we know, AI consumes a lot of energy, right? Like especially for cooling the data center, something like that, they need more water. But at the same time, people try to use AI to find how can we reduce climate change. But at the same time, AI consume energy to produce that kind of information. So our initiative in Coastal Sense, we try to make these low-cost technologies by not depending on the internet continuously. So we can get our own local data set, and from there, I think we can support to reduce the carbon footprint, something like that. Yeah, maybe it's not a big movement, but we try to make it impactful, at least at the local level itself. So even though it becomes our problem, but I think we can still do a solution to solve that problems, right? Even though it's still at the local level.
It's a very positive answer. I try to make it clear. I mean,
We have to be optimistic. We have to be positive.
you embrace it gracefully. I mean, like there are some youth people that why it's become our problem. We are not the one who destroy the earth. We're just inheriting from you, but now we should solve that problem for you. Now, I mean, like uh, three of us as we're speaking about the how youth movement actually changed throughout the years. And as you mentioned in the global platform itself, and there are some uh, in the many others opportunities, the authorities basically try to push the involvement of youth and perhaps young
Mhm,
professional or young scientists or whatever the terms they like to call us. Uh, is that the future only become a voice, or is there any future that this movement that come from the youth can become the decision makers instead of just
mhm,
just just giving the opinion? Is there
mhm,
any possibilities that okay, the youth one decide this? What do you think?
mhm. I think it will become a very, very big homework to bring youth voice to become one of the part to make a decision, especially at the government level, right? But I can see that our government in Indonesia try to encourage youth to participate more because U-INSPIRE Indonesia was invited by BNPB to become one of the panelists to speak on behalf of youth. So I can see that there is positive hope that we can hope from our government that they will bring our youth voice more, even though I think it's kind of like a baby steps, but yeah, I think it's going there. And I think the key is to keep the relationship with the government. And in U-INSPIRE Indonesia as well, we have advisors and we have youth and young professionals working at the government agency. So we can ask them to escalate our voice to become heard at the government level or maybe higher level, so that our initiative not just at the local level, but we can go bigger and we can go at the national or maybe in international level. So we start to keep the relationship with the member across Indonesia for U-INSPIRE Indonesia, especially for them who work at the BNPB itself or other government like a Ministry of Public Works who works in the infrastructure. We also have member who has interest in doing some kind of resilience infrastructure, something like that. And he tried to connect us with some kind of opportunities from the government that open for the youth and young professionals. So I know it's a big challenge, but as long as we can maintain our strong network and relationship with the member who works at the government, or maybe we can also make a strong connection with the senior level. Like, for example, we call it advisor in U-INSPIRE. So we have government officials who become our advisors in U-INSPIRE Indonesia. So he tried to always include U-INSPIRE if there is any opportunities related to some kind of micro grants or small projects related to DRR, he always tried to involve us to become part of that. And I think that's good. I think that's one of the good efforts that was made by the government in Indonesia.
Yeah, and I kind of wish that more governments would, make sure that young
Exactly,
people
yeah.
are heard. Because in
Thank you.
my country, you don't really see a lot of young people. It's about senior senior means you've had more experience, therefore you know more. Where it's not always true. Where the one advantage with young people is that they bring new innovative ideas, so they don't follow the mold, they break the mold and try and think of new solutions. So, I mean, an example I would say is if you've got a senior researcher who's, and we talk about AI, who doesn't know anything about AI, where AI has a lot of potential for DRR, that's not going to be useful then because you're kind of holding back progress. Where you bring someone who's a bit younger, who understands AI in a much better way, that can be useful as well. And working, hand in hand would work better. And
Exactly.
yeah, and also I wanted to go back to the global platform again. And how does it feel? This is one of the, this is our big, almost I would say World Cup Olympic style event. For disasters. How does it feel to actually speaking at these events and actually having the sense and actually having the spotlight on your project?
Of course, I was nervous because that was my first experience joining global platform and speaking on behalf of my organization to share about our initiative. And we are from youth and young professionals. Like we spoke in front of very, very senior level who has interest in disaster risk reduction. So at that time, I was very nervous, but then I spoke with the UNDRR committee at that time, who organized my participation to join the GPDRR, and he told me that our organization is one of the most interesting organization from UNDRR. So that's why they invited us to just not doing Ignite stage, but to also do interview and to post our initiative in the prevention web blog. So I was nervous, but I got supported from all the participants at that time. And I can see that they tried to listen very carefully, very enthusiastically. And after the event itself, they tried to approach me and tried to ask several things about our initiative more, and we share each other contacts and we follow up later. So I think it's a good start as a youth and young professional platform to speak in this global platform, even though it's not in the main stage. But I think we are going there. So it's still a baby step, but it's still a positive, and it's still one of our biggest achievements so far to share about our initiative in this global platform.
Walking these baby steps, you mentioned that, I mean, like it's needs to be done continuously, because like if you lost some way in the middle, there will be very hard to start it again. What do you think the challenge you yourself and the U-INSPIRE will face in the future to maintain this momentum and keep bringing out the good change in the world after the global platform?
Yeah, I think it's how we keep the spirit, how we keep our vision as a youth and young professional platform, because we have a lot of homeworks, but now, at least for my U-INSPIRE Indonesia, at least for this year, we have the focus to make a local initiative to focus at the local impact, and that's the homework. We try to keep the spirit, not just to ourselves, but to also to the next generation of U-INSPIRE, right? So we try to keep the spirit by doing several regular meetings with the member to share about our initiative, and also to share about our achievement, not just through webinars or by Zoom meetings, but we also share it online through our website or to social media, so we can gather more participation from the member, because currently not all the members are participating in our initiative because we have more than 200 members across Indonesia, but we try to keep the spirit by doing this kind of like a regular meetings to share about our experience about not only initiative at the coastal sense, we also have several initiatives at the different area for different natural hazards. So by doing these regular meetings, regular update with the member, and we listen more what they can do to improve our initiative, I think it's a good step to keep the baby step going there.
Yeah, and one of the hardest things is keeping momentum going on these projects. So in the in the UK, I lead the youth initiative, under the UK ADR, so the UK, United Kingdom Alliance for Disaster Research. And what we find is we have a very high turnover because young professionals, their job gets, so much that they have to, leave. And it is the hardest thing is to keep people motivated, especially when it's voluntary. And I mean,
Exactly.
and basically I'm running it on my own at the minute because most of my team have now left because their day jobs become too much, and it is hard. And I mean, it's the second initiative that I've for youth I have organized, and it's trying to keep that momentum going and make sure you can pass it on to the right person is the hardest thing. And I honestly, I can't give you any advice on how to do that because I find for anyone, I find it is so hard, to keep that momentum. You just need to. I also look for the one who's the most motivated and then try to pass it on to them and just keep hope for the best, basically.
Yeah. I think it also works for us. Yeah, we face that kind of challenges as well. But since we never insist our member to join the initiative, so we ask them to join voluntarily. And from there, we try to encourage their participation more and more. We try to highlight their role more and more. So once we finish, they can continue it. So yeah, I know that people come and go, but as long as we can get at least one people or two people in every year, in every initiative, I think we can make sure that the initiative can be passed along to them and continue to the next year. I think I'll stop there.
Well, as you mentioned that it's always maintaining the relationships and managing the people that's become the hardest, especially like many of youth and young professionals like just like oh this is interesting, I want to try it, and then like I also want to try another things, and I was just another things that it is like make them like didn't really committed 100% into the particular movement that we had. Like especially like sometimes like if you started it and you become the leader, like you want to everyone in the group to have the same energy as you. That okay, you should focus all this thing together. But yeah, as a young, they want to try many things, and it's in some other way they will distracted and try other things too. And as you mentioned, that there are many ways of keeping in touch within Indonesia. Do you also have the similar manners when you're keeping in touch with many other chapters in different countries under the umbrella of U-INSPIRE Alliance? How do you manage the communications between chapters in this alliance?
Yeah. So in U-INSPIRE Alliance, it was led by the Secretary General, and now he is from Indonesia as well. And for the U-INSPIRE Alliance itself, as far as I know, they also did some kind of regular meetings to update each of the country chapters, what they are doing and what they can do together. And from there, I think they can maintain the communication between the country chapters, even though not all the country chapters are active currently. But yeah, as long as we have at least 2 or 3 country chapters and we can do some kind of collaboration workshop or webinar or like literacy lab, some kind of that, they can continue doing that. But to be honest, I'm not involving actively in U-INSPIRE Alliance because I have a partnership coordinator who participated actively, more active in the U-INSPIRE Alliance. But as far as I know, they did some kind of regular meetings to update more. And currently in U-INSPIRE Indonesia as well, we try to submit a grant application in collaboration with the U-INSPIRE Central Asia. So it is one of the U-INSPIRE Alliance country chapters. But yeah, we try to make some kind of collaborative initiative together, and we try to submit several opportunities, not just with the Central Asia, but with other country chapters. This is just one of the examples from there. So yeah, they do regular meetings, and they do some kind of like mini talk show for the country chapters together. So I think that is one of the way to keep the relationship, to keep the communication, and to keep the country chapters active throughout the year.
So what advice would you give to young scientists or young professionals who actually want to lead the RR? Because there are obviously going to be some, and I come across them, every few years, who really want to do stuff, but then they don't know where to go next. So what advice would you give?
My advice would be just start everything. Just do it. If you cannot find bigger communities, just try to find several people who have the same interest with you and start local. We can start everything at the local level, especially because from the local, we can understand that local voice are needed to be heard, right? And from there, we can make more impact initiative, not to mention that doing the national level is good, but for now, if you have the interest to do some kind of DRR or climate resilience work, it's okay to start work, or maybe you can start to find the community online, not just from the website, but maybe you can check online on the social media. I think you can find a lot of youth and young professional initiative who has the same interest in disaster risk reduction and climate change. And maybe if you are around Asia Pacific, you can join U-INSPIRE Alliance, or maybe you can initiate your country chapters. You can start your country chapters from U-INSPIRE Alliance. We are happy to do that. Or maybe if you want to collaborate, you can. I think every youth and young professional platform are very, very open to make a collaboration with any other young scientists or young researchers, right? Because currently partnership or multi-stakeholders, or like we call it multi-helix, some kind of that, is become important to support the DRR, because we know that disaster is everybody business. But if we think that it's everybody business, sometimes nobody's doing that. So yeah, I think it's good to try to approach the community online. Maybe you can find it in the social media or in the website, or if not, you can start at the local level with your friends, or maybe with your colleagues, or maybe with your supervisor who has the same interest. I think it's good rather than not doing it. I think that's all from me, Ashley and Haris.
Yes. Well, one more thing. I mean, like, what
Sure.
is the future outlook of the U-INSPIRE? Maybe in the next 5 or 10 years, do you have any plans or any idea that you want to see U-INSPIRE grow to what level, or to already implement to what extent?
We want to bring our voice as a youth and young professionals go bigger, and we want to bridge the gap more impactful, not just in one or two areas, but we want to also connect with more youth and young professionals at the local level. Because even though we have hundreds of members in Indonesia, but most of them are centralized in Java. So as we know that disasters in Indonesia are across the area, not only in Java, but also in Sumatra or Eastern Indonesia. So hopefully that we can connect with more youth and young professionals and we can work more with the local communities to strengthen their resilience in disasters. And we also can encourage more youth at the local community to become the local champions, so to make sure that the disaster risk reductions become sustained at their area, because they have the local champion, especially from the youth community itself. Yeah, hopefully our initiative doesn't stop here, but we can grow bigger and we can meet more youth across Indonesia to improve the disaster resilience.
Well, I guess that's everything. Do you have anything more to add, Mark, or to ask to her?
No, that was excellent.
Yeah, yeah,
Thanks, Ashley and Haris.
yeah. Thank you so much, Gio, for coming to our podcast and sharing your experience with U-INSPIRE and especially from the global platform. And hopefully, U-INSPIRE can grow bigger and sustainable in the future. And for all the listeners that, as Gio mentions, that wherever you are, especially in the Asia Pacific, that you want, you want to become part of something bigger, especially in disaster risk reductions, you can always reach out to U-INSPIRE in your country. And although, of course, also you can also try to look for the info in the internet as well as IDRiM. And I guess that's it. See you next time. Bye.
Yeah.